All right, guys, welcome to Onelife Podcast. Here with Talia. Thank you for being here. She's a personal trainer, Black Belt in BJJ, which is so ridiculously badass.
Thank you.
And you're also a world champion in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu.
Yes, sir.
Congratulations.
Thank
That's
you.
amazing. Really grateful for you being here, and I can't wait to pick your brain. The accomplishments that you've got are just amazing.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
It's like, I've done jiu-jitsu, I've done martial arts. I understand how much work it takes to do what you've done.
Thank you.
So there's so much I want to talk to you about. But you just told me a story. So you're in a competition, you're a brown belt.
Yes.
And what happens?
And just in general?
Oh, no, in your competition. You win your competition?
Oh, for Worlds.
Yeah.
So I went to a Worlds camp about a month before the actual tournament, which is in San Diego. I was Gracie Maida at the time. That's where I kind of grew up training. And there was an all-female Worlds camp to get ready for the World Championships.
Okay.
So this was my second year going. I spent about 2 weeks. If I could spend the whole month, I would, but it's just expensive, obviously, living in San Diego for that long. Yeah, a day, let alone a full month, right?
Yeah.
So I spent the last 2 weeks of May typically in San Diego training 2 to 3 times a day, having like roommates from the actual camp as well. Like we all stay together. And I would go home, I would come home the week of Worlds. So I came home the week of Worlds. My older brother's a third-degree black belt. So I would always come home and like kind of do some fine tuning with him because he was always like my coach essentially.
Yeah.
So we would do some fine tuning, just kind of taper down. And then we would drive out to Long Beach, California for the actual tournament about the day before. Didn't have any crazy weight drops for this one. As a matter of fact, it was my first time competing at a heavier weight class. So if you go back a few months, I actually had my second shoulder surgery, September of 2017.
Gotcha.
I got cleared to compete February 2018. So everybody was like, don't do Worlds, Tal. You just had, shoulder surgery, blah, blah, blah. My dad was like, you're doing the wrong weight class. You need to go back down to feather. But my surgeon was like, hey, like, you recovered well, but I don't really want you to
have your arm manipulated
exactly.
for no reason.
He was like, do not cut weight. Yeah, exactly. He said, when you cut weight, you're more prone to injury. So he was like, I would prefer you to stay where you're at. So I did. And a lot of people didn't like that I went up a weight class, but it kind of worked out. I had 5 matches, which was the most out of everyone in the division. I finished the first match with like 45 seconds left, but mind you, at a brown belt level, your matches are 8 minutes straight.
Damn.
So,
That's
and then
a long time.
you get black belt and it turns 10 minutes. It is a long time because you don't get like breaks in between. It's just until someone
no
taps
rounds.
out or the full.
With someone equally, if not better than you.
Correct. It was a lot. So the first match, I tapped her with like 45 seconds left of the match. So I basically did the whole match. The next 2 matches went full distance. I won by points, both of those. And then the semifinals, it's weird how everything kind of worked out. For, like that day, I came in just knowing where I needed to be and what I needed to do. It was like an out of body experience because my semifinals match, I tapped her 3 minutes into the match. It's like I knew like, okay, all of the energy that I had, I need to save it for the final.
Gotcha.
So in the division itself, I believe there was 15 girls. And there was 5 of us from the same team.
Oh, really? Okay.
So we had that conversation at camp, like, hey, you might, if you run into a teammate, you guys have to fight, be adults about it. We're all here for the same reason. Again, the universe was on my side that day. I didn't fight a single one of my teammates.
Oh, really?
They all lost. Like, if they would have won, like, the match that they were supposed to win, we would have met in the next round. And they all lost in the round before we would have met. And the girl that I ended up beating by points in the final, she beat the favorite to win, which was my teammate Gabby.
Okay.
So she beat her, and I ended up beating her in the final. So the final was the closest match. There's a concept in jiu-jitsu called stalling.
Stalling.
Yes. So it's when you get a good position that's very difficult to get out of.
Like a dominant position.
Correct.
Yeah.
I wouldn't even say like dominant. It's like I guess it would be considered dominant because you're kind of in control.
Somewhere you can get a little bit of a breath in and chill. Okay.
So it's usually with the lapel and it's wrapped around some sort of limb. Well, she was doing that the entire match.
To you?
Yeah, so I couldn't move. Like she didn't want me to move. So you get penalties in this particular federation, which is IBJJF. So she was getting stalling penalties.
Gotcha.
This particular position was called 50-50, which is a very controversial position in jiu-jitsu because it is what it is. You each have 50-50. You both have the opportunity to either, reverse your opponent or even tap your opponent.
Okay.
But it's annoying because it's like a teeter-totter.
Gotcha.
So if you're on the bottom and you just kind of kick your leg and teeter-totter at the top, that's 2 points. You just swept the person. And then vice versa. So it's kind of like, it's like a standstill and it's very boring to watch. So I was stuck in this position. And all of my coaches were on the side. I had my main coach who promoted me from kids belts to my black belt. I had my female coach from the World Camp there. And I had now 10-time black belt world champion, Bia Mesquita. She was on the sideline with me because I trained with her to get ready for this tournament. And they're all like, I see Bia and my other coach, they're doing moves on each other to try to show me, like, this is what you do.
This is what you need to do.
If you do this, you'll get up.
Well, you try not to get tapped out.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I finally was able to come up and she fled the mat. So that's, you have like the bounds in the mat area, right? And she fled it, which you get in trouble for doing that.
Okay.
It's cheating. It's like you ran out of bounds, because she knew I was going to come up top in the back position if she would have stayed in bounds. So the ref ended up giving me 2 points, which put me ahead. Okay. With 40 seconds left in the match. Yeah. So there's just 40 seconds of everyone screaming their head off. So like, just pull guard and keep it. Like, just keep her there. Like,
just play it safe.
Yeah. They're like, you have 40 seconds left. Just keep it. Just keep it. And mind you, the entire time of Worlds, every match that I won, I didn't celebrate. It was kind of like, my dad always told me, like, one fight at a time. When people ask you how many fights you have today, one. Okay. And so then it's the next one. I like that. So the next one, So I would win the first one and I'd just, immediately, that's over and done with.
Yeah, what's next?
Fight two, So I kept it which I'm proud of myself because I grew up being a little too emotional when I competed. Whether I won or I lost, it was like, you end up maturing at a certain point, right? I didn't know how to act when I won or lost. So my semifinals match was the first match that I like kind of clapped my hands a couple times because I realized I'm going to the finals of like the world championships. Yeah. I wanted to be a world champion since I was 7 years old, So the second the timer went off in the finals match, I just like lost it. All the emotions that I was holding back all day just came through me and I just collapsed onto the mat. Oh, absolutely. Really? Bawling my eyes out. I'm crying. I'm like laying down on the mat. Everyone's just losing their shit on the sides. My parents are there and they're watching from above because only athletes and coaches are allowed on the mat side. My mom's like pushing through security to get down to my side because I just accomplished something that like most people can't do. I honestly never thought I could. Let alone an American.
How many years to get to that point?
I was training for 15 years until that's boom when I got
3 to 5 days a week, would you say?
Yeah, minimum. At that point in my life, I was training less than 5 days a week. Like it was rare.
Hours at a time, right? This is the elite of the elite of the elite. Like,
absolutely.
This is the world champion. Like,
I did have a part-time job because some people, a lot in jiu-jitsu, it's normal to kind of like live the bummy jiu-jitsu lifestyle, but
I just train.
Yeah. I mean, I lived with my parents. So I was 21 when I won my world title. So I still lived with my parents. But, my parents did raise me to be able to have to pay my car note and I have bills to pay. So like I had a part-time job at like a call center at when it was SLS at the time. Now it's in Sahara. And I was lucky because my boss was a black belt at the gym that I trained at.
Really?
So we were training partners. He's known me since I was like a little kid. So he knew when he hired me, I was like, hey, I have to take a full month basically off of work because I had to do the 2 weeks for the World's Camp and then the week of Worlds. So about
most people are going to understand that.
Correct. And luckily, I planned that out to where I was like, hey, and I only worked part-time, anywhere from like 3 to 4 days a week. And it was always like a swing shift. So I can at least, train in the morning.
Training was the focus. Yeah.
Correct. I mean, there would be times where I'd get off of work at 10 o'clock at night and, I would go to the gym that I originally started training, not my jiu-jitsu gym, like the strength conditioning gym that I originally started training at. 10 o'clock at night, there was jiu-jitsu mats there. I would have someone meet me there and I would drill whatever I needed to drill, even if it was for 30 minutes. I was dead exhausted, just got off of work. I had already trained earlier. But if I was having trouble with something, I needed to do whatever I needed to do to figure it out, And at that point, I was very thankful. I had very supportive training partners because those sort of things you can't do by yourself.
Yeah, that's the problem with jiu-jitsu, right? There's only so much you can do by yourself.
Correct.
And then you're on stage, you've just won the champion, and then what happens?
So I'm there, I'm waiting for all the girls from the division to show up. One of them didn't show up actually for the podium. So in IBJJF, they give you two third place, there's two people in the third place. They don't do like fight for third.
Okay.
I don't know why, but that's just
interesting.
always what they've done. So there's always 4 people in a full podium.
Yeah.
Well, the girl so I ended up armbarring the girl in the semifinal in the 3 minutes. She was kind of the bully of the division too. Like my dad, like he had called me from up top and he was like, hey, she's doing some dirty stuff to these girls. Be careful. So like, I mean, this is the World Championships. I ripped her arm and I guess she didn't come back from the medic. So she didn't make it to the podium, which I didn't know. I never want to hurt my opponent.
Yeah, of course
that's not because I don't want to get hurt, but that's what tapping's for. You got to tap early, save your body parts, So I'm waiting for all the girls to get there. All of my teammates from World's Camp, my parents are there. My brother unfortunately actually missed it.
Oh, really?
He was working as a security guard at Marquee at the time, and they like refused to give him the time off.
Okay.
Which he was on the phone the whole time and was like, I'm like legitimately depressed that I missed the biggest moment of my sister's life, But I'm waiting there. My professor at the time, Mika Sapili, is the man who I started training jiu-jitsu with and gave me my black belt. I don't see him there, and then he like shows up a little bit later with another one of my teammates. I get on the podium, everyone's chanting and stuff. We're taking the official picture, and all of a sudden Mika walks towards me and he pulls a black belt out from underneath his hoodie. And it was just like,
that's awesome.
I guess, obviously not in front of me. He ran up to my dad. He was like, do you think she would want to get her black belt here on the podium or back at home? And my dad looked at him and was like, my daughter just won a world title. Give her her black belt on that damn podium.
That's awesome.
Which I was his first podium, and I think only podium black belt. And honestly, I might be the only one to win an adult black belt an adult world title and get an adult black belt on the podium.
That's so cool.
It was.
What was the emotion? Like, what happened?
More crying, lots of crying,
really?
And I like lots of uncontrollable crying, and it's just like, again, out of body experience. I was just. Everyone started yelling and my parents are crying. Like my dad's a very stoic, very just insensitive sounds insulting, but it's like for a good, like in a good way.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
He's very logical about his emotions. And I remember hugging him and he was crying.
Really?
Because it was just like, oh my God.
Cool.
It was the coolest thing in the world. So, and the girls next to me on the podium were cheering me on too, because I mean, that's something they want. They want to get a black belt on.
Everyone's got the same goal.
Yeah, exactly.
And we talked about it before, like Lex Fredman and Joe Rogan, right? Mm-hmm. I've seen both of their videos, and they've accomplished amazing things. And they've both personally come out and said getting a black belt and BJJ is the biggest and best thing they've ever done in their life.
Because it takes so much,
much work. Someone who doesn't understand, like you're talking about 8 to 12 years, right?
Yeah,
of consistent training.
Yeah.
Just getting your butt kicked on a daily but weekly basis.
Yes, absolutely.
Getting manhandled, woman-handled on a consistent basis.
Absolutely, getting my ass beat every day.
And getting back up and doing it again and again and failing forward and learning as you go.
Making mistakes, getting injured, getting hurt. I've had 2 shoulder surgeries. I have scoliosis from jiu-jitsu. I wasn't born with it. Yeah, it was just
self-inflicted.
Correct. It was just a constant load of other people on my spine in these funky positions,
Funky position is a good word, right?
Yeah, it's not normal. Our body doesn't move like that, I have finger arthritis and, knee tendonitis, all the things. I've torn my LCL. And so it's definitely, they call it the gentle art, but I mean, they call it the gentle art because the smaller person usually prevails, but there's nothing gentle about the sport.
That's so badass. What a cool story.
It is. I know it's crazy. It still feels like it happened yesterday, and it was just a big turning point, and not just my jiu-jitsu career, but just in my life in general. I realized that I can do whatever I can do, and anyone can. Anyone can do whatever they want. They have to do everything. That was the first time I competed, and I wasn't nervous. And it was so weird because I was like, why am I not nervous? And I wasn't nervous because there was not a single thing that I could have done differently. You
put the work in, right? The reps.
No
you put the time
corners
in.
were cut. Yeah. My diet was to a T. My strength conditioning was where it needed to be. I was healthy.
You was prepped as prep could be.
I couldn't have done anything differently in it. And
besides lose and learn what you did wrong and try again.
Correct.
Yeah, that's crazy.
And I think the biggest thing for me that day that I realized was, so there's a Japanese proverb, it's called like mushin. So it means mind of no mind. So essentially what that means is like just being in the moment. So if I wasn't staring at my opponent in the face, I wasn't thinking about the match. Because what I tend to do is I would think like, hey, I'm going to shake hands with this person. This is what I'm going to do. And then I would start to get anxious.
Okay.
And then I'd get nervous. Like, of course, there's having a game plan and talking that through with a coach and teammates, like weeks in advance, that's different. But the day of the tournament, if I wasn't on the mat competing against the person, I wasn't thinking about the match. I was talking about the weather in California.
Okay.
I was eating mangoes in between matches, and I was talking about how good the mangoes are in California versus in Vegas.
Gotcha.
Like, I was talking about what was happening at that very moment versus talking about what was next. I mean, we spoke about the match that I had right after, you know, my coaches told me whatever I needed to know, and then that was it. Hey, you're fighting this girl. Cool. That's it.
Interesting.
I don't really need to know. And it helped because it kept me from being nervous.
That's
and
very
then finally I'm looking at the person across from me on the mat. I was like, hey, now. And even in the match, I felt like I was playing a video game in my head. I was like, hey, step like 2 inches to the right. Okay, she's going to do this. When she does this, I'm going to slide my knee this way. Like, that's how I was talking to myself in my head. And I've never done that before in a tournament. And it clearly worked. So
I've got a question for you. You've got such a enormous high. Do you ever worry that you're not going to be able to beat that high?
Yeah, because I don't think I have yet in my life.
Well, there's a thing, right? They talk about the astronauts that landed on the moon. And when they came back, there was a depression in these people because they did the most crazy thing possible. So there's nothing could compare with that.
Correct. No,
and you're at a pretty high level there. So what do you do from there as far as like personal?
It's hard because I don't think I have beat that high yet. And I think the only way
I doubt you have yet, right?
I would beat it is if I won a world title at Black Belt, which that is just, I don't want to use the word impossible. It's not, you know, but that's 50 times harder than winning a world title at Brown. And Brown Belt division's always stacked because all these girls, they always say Brown Belts are just black belts. They need to go through this one more belt before they get the black belt, you know? So I think that would honestly be the only thing that would beat it. And part of, you know, I have gone through like identity crisis where, you know, so with Gracie Umaida, I left my family and I left Gracie Umaida November of 2019. Nothing against the head of Gracie Umaida, which is Hoyler Gracie. I was sad because my camp that I would go to for Worlds was Gracie Umaida, and I loved my coaches over there. My family and I didn't see eye to eye with Mika here. Okay. And he is the one that promoted my brother and I from white belt all the way to black. Okay. Just jiu-jitsu is so political for absolutely no reason. Really? It's really bad. And it honestly borderline ruins the sport. And that whole experience of leaving Gracie Umaida and trying to find a new home really kind of left a bad taste in my mouth with jiu-jitsu. Interesting. So during that time of me trying to find a new team, my brother wasn't even training at that time. He was like, I'm absolutely over it. Gotcha. Like, it was just a really bad experience. And it makes me sad because, again, this is our entire life. I've spent my whole life doing it. So finding new teams and trying teams out and not liking it or dealing with the same thing. And, you know, I finally found a great team. I'm under Cascal here in Vegas. I train at Chris Angle. With husband and wife, Chris Angle and Mylene Angle, who, fun fact, I've competed against 4 times. Oh, really? Yes, but now she's my training partner, so it's amazing. Nice. But I've gone through identity crisis where it's like, who am I if I'm not the girl that's standing at the top of the podium? Like, what am I good for? Like, why can't I, you know, I got my black belt on the podium and I stepped into this whole new role and I was like, well, this is hard. All these girls are just incredible, especially the division I'm in. It's stacked with multiple time black belt world champions, black belt world champions. They've won world titles in different belts as well. But, you know, these people live, eat, breathe in the gym. And like, I'm getting older and I need to be able to, you know, pay my bills and live somewhere, not live with my parents until I'm 30 years old, you know, which there's nothing wrong with that. But at least my parents didn't raise us to do that, you know? So yeah, I definitely have gone through the ups and downs of like, who am I? Because I want to feel that feeling of a world championship every day.
Yeah, absolutely.
But like you can't.
Yeah.
So again, I feel like the only way I would feel it again is if I won it at black. And I'm not saying that I can't. If I put in the same effort that I put in when I won a brown belt world title, I can absolutely do it. My dad tells me that every day. Not every day, but all the time.
You got it if you want it. Like,
Correct.
you may not want that goal.
And part of me, it's more so like me being realistic with myself now. Like, I run my own personal training business and it's incredibly demanding. I train very high level people. I had someone just place 6th place at the Olympia stage.
Awesome.
In the bikini
Awesome.
category. It was her first Olympia. She took 6. Like, they called her the dark horse. Like, I started training her back last April and helped her develop the body she needed to do that. You know, and so I tend to put all of that in front of me now.
Yeah. Am I going to be like more selfish, or am I going to be more selfless? And
Correct.
Where do I want to direct my energy?
And I know from experience, like, some people say they can do both, but I genuinely don't believe it's possible. You know, without something lagging.
Sacrificing something.
If I'm working 8 to 10 hour days training people, so it is like, it can be a physically demanding job. You know, I take the weights and put the weights back, and, you know, I always have to be at 10 for them. And then it's time for me to go train jiu-jitsu. I'm exhausted and just getting my ass beat the entire training session. So I tried to compete. So last time I competed was November of 2021. It was a local tournament here. It was the same federation. And I fought 2 incredible girls. One of them I fought before, and it was the first time we fought, I lost, but it was a very close match, like as close as it can be. Her husband is like a legend in the sport. You know, that's kind of where I'm at in like my jiu-jitsu career. It's like, these are the people that I'm fighting. And the other, same thing, like, she, I believe, just won worlds this past year as a black belt. I lost to both of them in terrible fashion. And it was back to back too. And it was tough because that was me trying to work and also compete at this high level.
Interesting.
And I mean, I also feel like I was competing for everyone else and not because I actually wanted to.
Okay.
I started at this new gym, you know, they just got a world champion that walked in the door. I got my first degree on my black belt from my new professor. And what do they want? They ask you when you're competing again. You're a world champion, when are you competing again? So then I feel like I have to be like, okay, I'll do this one.
Yeah.
So I felt like I needed to, because I'm in this new team. Like, I gotta like lead from the front and like set a good example. You know, all these people are looking at me like, oh, she's won a world title. Talia's here. She's a world champion. And I'm like, no.
Yeah.
No, I'm just like all of you. I'm gonna come in here and get my ass beat some days too. Like, I don't care, you know? So that was the last time I competed, and that's when I realized next time I compete is gonna be for me. It's gonna be no expectations. I'm gonna enjoy myself, because I miss going out there and testing myself against some of the best women in the world.
So the big thing I want to talk to you about is female self-defense. I think it's very important.
Absolutely.
So someone, obviously, like, not every girl is going to be a black belt in jiu-jitsu, but how important is it for females to train? And at what level do you feel like you have enough skill to take care of yourself?
Well, if all women could do jiu-jitsu, like in a perfect world, I would say do it.
Do you think jiu-jitsu is probably the most important thing for a female over any stand-up or?
I think it's the most practical, yes.
Okay, practical.
I love boxing. I grew up in a boxing family. That's how we were introduced to martial arts, but it's just not practical. I mean, if a girl's 120 pounds and her attacker is 200 plus pounds, sure, punch him in the face. Not much is gonna, you're most likely not going to do any damage, and you're gonna actually just make that person angrier, and they're gonna react as such, right? Okay. So with jiu-jitsu, especially the jiu-jitsu I grew up training. So I was Gracie Maida, Hoyler Gracie, and the whole Gracie family is very, very, very self-defense focused. You know, every month we would have an entire week or two where we would just review self-defense, and this started from when I was in the kids class. Yeah. And actually, Hoyler does like a self-defense certification that you go to San Diego, you stay there for 10 days and you take his course, and you learn, you know, from obviously different holds and things like that, and even like weapon self-defense, you know, guns and knives and all that. So I do believe jiu-jitsu is the most practical. Okay. Because this sport was developed for people that don't have the athleticism or the strength. That these
it's leverage, right?
Correct. So
like I'm 220, you're 100 and something.
Yeah, 150, 140, yeah.
Okay.
And I can look and be like, that doesn't matter.
Yeah, me being twice your size and twice your weight and probably a lot stronger, it doesn't make any difference, right?
No. It's, for the longest...
I don't think people quite get how amazing jiu-jitsu is for
They
that.
don't. And you know what? I will say that compared to when I was younger and, and just started training, and I would tell my friends at school in elementary, middle school, like, I do jiu-jitsu. And they'd be like, is that like karate?
Yeah.
Versus
Nobody
now.
cares, right?
No, and no one knew what it was.
And even when UFC started and people like doing jiu-jitsu on the ground, everyone's like, what are they doing?
Why are they rolling on the ground?
This is so stupid. Oh, I could do that.
Yeah, exactly.
And then they do it and like, oh my God.
Correct. And I feel like nowadays it's become more mainstream. Like people
way more
know,
and that close to UFC.
100%. And people know what it is, and I think they respect it more. So now that people know what jiu-jitsu is, and I think women should really, even if they don't want to do the sports jiu-jitsu, that's fine. If I ever opened my own school, my brother and I have talked about this, we never wanted to be the coaches that forced our students to compete. Like, I just want a woman.
Whatever you want to get out of it, right?
I want a woman to walk through a parking garage at night and know that she's going to be okay. I want her to feel that.
At what level did you feel like you could take care of yourself against a male? Like talking belts or the amount of years you put in before you felt okay? So
I started jiu-jitsu at 7. I think when I was 16, 17 is when I felt safe.
Okay.
So when I turned 16, I got my blue belt with all 4 stripes on it, because when you turn 16 is when you go into the adult belts. You're no longer in the kids' belts. And so he would give us our belt with all 4 stripes, Mika. That's how he did it if you grew up training as a kid. Yeah. Just so you can have some time at blue belt. But we didn't stay at blue belt long, because if you think about it, I started training at 7 years old. I'm getting my blue belt, which is only the second rank of adult belts, when I'm 16, So I'm definitely more than a blue belt, and most kids are more than a blue belt when they're 16. Yeah, absolutely. After they've been training since their entire childhood. So I would say 16, and definitely when I was purple belt, that's when I was like, I can do this. Like, I can be safe. I can walk to my car from school, or, go out with friends and know that I'm safe.
So say, how old are you now?
26.
Okay, so say you started at 26. How many years in before you think, you could take care of yourself? Would you say purple belt, or would you say even just blue belt? I would say probably halfway through blue. Okay. I wouldn't say blue belt. 3, 4 years, maybe 5 years? I'd say anywhere. And everyone learns so differently. Like my boyfriend just started training jiu-jitsu. He's a 3rd degree white belt. And let me tell you. Which is still a huge advantage over the normal person. Getting really good. Yeah. And it's because him in particular, he's competed in other sports like powerlifting and Olympic weightlifting. He was a paratrooper in the Army. So like he's also very, very educated. So he's very good at learning. Okay. So I think when he went to jiu-jitsu, he was sucking everything in, like soaking it all in like a sponge. So now I can look at my boyfriend, and versus when we first started dating, where people would, because he's bigger than me. He's like 215, 220, about 5'10", right? Guy. Yeah. So we would go out, like, before he started jiu-jitsu, and people would be like, oh, you brought your security guard with you. And, we'd be referring to him. And I would just smile, nobody would know, and he'd be like, no. But now I've gotten to the point that when we go out, like if something were to happen, he is going to be a good backup for me. Like he actually could handle it. I can kind of just hang out now, and he's been training a little over a year now. Actually, almost. I think May will be like 2 years. It's so funny. Like I would roll with my friend, like we'd be drinking, ready to go out. We're always rolling. Yeah. And it's even like at a basic level, you're just toying with people. Yeah. The advantage it gives you is insane. Absolutely. And every day as you get better, it gets easier and easier. It becomes second nature. And then you roll with someone at a higher level and they're just puppeting and they're just stringing you and they're manipulating with your legs and you cannot get close to them. And then they get on you. It's like a wet blanket. every single crevice in your body, and it's the most awful feeling.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
But it's the most humbling thing ever.
It is. It's amazing. I mean, my boyfriend, he's a bigger guy, so he rolls with bigger guys. But then when he rolls with me and I get mount, and he's like, "Why is your mount
get you off, right?
so much worse than the guy that weighs 300 pounds?"
Someone half the weight, half the strength, but you cannot get them off you.
And it's jiu-jitsu. It's the leverage. It's the little things that you do, the little cues that you learn growing up. And especially for me, I've been doing jiu-jitsu for so long that when I first started, there wasn't any women. So I had to figure out how to train with guys. And, you know, all these guys want to bench press me off of them. But, excuse me, they want to bench press me off of them. So I needed to find ways to position my body so they couldn't do that, you know?
Couldn't.
Yes. And it worked. Yes. And I'm very lucky. My brother is incredible. Like, some people were put on this earth and were born to be gifted at something.
Yeah.
I genuinely don't believe I was born to be gifted at jiu-jitsu.
You just put the work in.
I did. I do believe that. I mean, I did have athleticism on my side because I got it from my dad. My brother was put on this earth to be incredible at jiu-jitsu.
Really? He's that good, is he?
It is a whole different level. Like, all these guys that are like really big time now, my brothers beat them at one point at purple belt, brown belt. Like,
gotcha.
My brother is incredible. My brother cannot train for a year, walk onto the mat, and just leave a scene.
Really?
And with no effort, too.
That's awesome.
He's incredible. And I'm lucky because that was my coach. So he was that's when we got along the most, surprisingly, is when we were training jiu-jitsu together.
Are you guys super close because of that
yes.
relationship?
I think.
And that respect for one another? Correct.
I think if it wasn't for jiu-jitsu, I don't even know what our relationship would be like. Sorry, I have a tickle in my throat.
No, I've done that before. I literally started the podcast and I was like, oh my God.
Like, great. I didn't have it all day until right now. Okay, I think I got it. But no, I don't think, if it wasn't for jiu-jitsu, like, I mean, our parents, it's just us two, so our parents were really big on, like, you guys only have each other. When we leave, it's only you guys.
Yeah.
But it was jiu-jitsu that brought us together. You know, like, after I won a world title, like, I think my brother, not that he didn't realize it before, but it's just when you accomplish something like that, you're like, wow, my sibling can do this. Now I'm going to do even more to help them reach like the next level. And my brother missed the world title, but a couple weeks later, I made my black belt debut on UFC Fight Pass on Eddie Bravo Invitational. I got invited like April, so I got invited months before Worlds. So I knew I was doing it. And my brother and I had another coach, his name is Brian Glenn. They came down with me to coach me for EBI. And it was, not only did I have so much fun just competing, my brother had so much fun coaching and just being there. Like all the girls that were on this card were phenomenal. And my brother gets to sit here and watch his sister like give them a run for their money. Or like the second match I lost to a multiple time IBJJF Hall of Famer. But I gave her a run for her money, and I will always remember that. And it was fun, and it was fun for him. And like we get to build these memories together.
That's interesting. Yeah. Do you think people should have stand-up skills as well as jiu-jitsu?
Yeah.
To avoid going to the ground if need be?
I think it depends on the person. I absolutely love boxing, and I mean, yeah, you should learn how, because all fights start standing, you know?
Yeah.
But even not striking, like having some sort of like wrestling background to help.
Or distance or range or...
Like, to understand distance management. You know, if you don't want to do striking, doing some sort of stand-up like judo, which I'm definitely more of a fan of wrestling just because of I believe it goes better with jiu-jitsu than judo, because with judo, they do expose their back a little too much. And
well, it's sports jiu-jitsu, isn't it? That's what judo is.
It's more the takedowns and like a quarter of the ground. You know, it's the throws are beautiful, the sport is beautiful, but for me, it's never been practical for me, and wrestling always was practical for me.
Okay. You mentioned when we first met, you mentioned something that resonated with me is doing martial arts. It gives you self-awareness.
Yes.
Outside of training.
Correct.
So when you get in your ID car, when you walk in the streets, can you talk to me about that?
Yeah. I mean, I've done several self-defense seminars that I love. I did one last year for the Raiderettes.
Like participated or taught?
Taught.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah, so I taught the Raiderettes, the dancers for the Raiders, taught them how to defend themselves because they were going through some weird stuff.
I bet they are,
I've done it for real estate agents. And the first 20 minutes or so of my self-defense seminars is not moves. It's things that you would think are common sense, but they're just not, right?
Like what
for
type
example,
of stuff?
Getting into your car and not immediately locking the door.
Okay.
You know, some people get into their car and like respond to a text or
probably first thing they do, right?
Pick their playlist for the car ride, turn their car on and get everything set up, but the door's unlocked. You know, the second you sit in your car, lock the door.
Okay.
You know,
that's pretty simple, isn't it?
It is. You would think, but like, I mean, I've done it before, and I'm like, what am I doing?
I mean, I do it every time, but I'm not a 100-pound female.
Yeah, exactly. Correct.
Yeah.
There's things like there's a 75 hard challenge that a lot of people I'm in this group that people are doing, and it involves one of the workouts have to be outdoors. And I'm in this group chat where, you know, the girls and guys are posting pictures and videos of them doing their outdoor workouts. And a lot of it's just walks outside. I'm looking and they have both headphones in.
Gotcha.
So I was like, how do I send a text so I don't sound like someone's mother? But I was like, hey guys, you know, let's have one headphone in when you're outside so you can still hear what's going on. Like, you can't hear if someone's right behind you if you have both headphones in.
Especially the noise cancellation. Those things are incredible.
Yeah, actually, exactly. So you should not have those on when you're outside, especially if you're by yourself. You know, things like texting when you're like walking to your car from wherever you were at, the gym, the store, and you're on your phone texting. No, wait, that can wait. I promise that can wait. Phone calls can wait until you get in your car, lock the door.
So being aware of your safety and putting it first.
Correct. It's little things like when I walk out of buildings, work, grocery stores, I look to my left, I look to my right before I step outside. You know, especially stores like Sprouts, they have the little indentation in the store where there's like usually a bench, but they're technically behind you if you keep walking forward. So I always look to see if there's someone sitting there, if so who, if not, whatever, and then I'll walk. Like things like that, making sure like, and people are like, you're paranoid. I'm like, but
no,
ask me if I've been
paranoid.
in a bad situation.
Because I do similar things. I see something shady, I'm happy to turn around and see the awareness and see the distance and look, just be more aware, more conscious.
And that alone will mitigate the crazy things that happen in this world. Just being aware. Every time, you know, I work at Self-Made now, the gym is huge and I typically can't see the front door, but every time I hear it close, I turn and I look to see who comes in. Every single time. Because I would, you know, what if the door is unlocked and it faces the street and anyone can just walk in during most of the day? There's hours that the door automatically locks, but it's the hours that it's open, it's all day. So I like to see who walks into the door.
Gotcha.
You know, and I don't carry purses, which this is different. That's obviously like women love their bags and stuff, but I don't carry handbags because if I have to defend myself, which hopefully I never will have to, I don't want to put my bag down to have to defend myself because what if someone steals it? If I have like a fanny pack or like a backpack, both of my arms are still free to do what I need to do, but no one's going to steal anything from me. So it's these things that like I've really learned to think about.
That's
Plus,
interesting.
My parents grew up not in the best side of town here in Vegas, all my uncles and stuff. So their stories and like they obviously, when you grow up a bit on the rougher side, they teach you, you know, they teach us that, you know, someone asks you your shoe size, you say my size, like things like that. They taught us that. And then plus with the jiu-jitsu and the self-defense, it just kind of all came together. And, you know, I'm lucky I haven't been in any bad situations. And it's because I try my best not to put myself in those situations. I went to the gas station at night last week. I typically don't. That's a huge rule of mine. But I was going to jiu-jitsu and I forgot to fill up my water. So what I immediately did was I parked and I put my boyfriend on the phone because I already saw a bunch of shenanigans happening on the outside of this gas station.
Yeah.
So I called him and he's like, you okay? I was like, yeah, I'm at the gas station on Sunset in Valley View. I need to grab water. Can I keep you on the phone? He's like, of course. And of course, I'm on the phone. A couple men try to talk to me and I kind of just was like, no, thank you. You know, don't, you know.
You're being assertive, aren't you?
Correct. Yeah, and but that's me being preventative. Unfortunately, I hate that we have to be like that. But we do. Like, men think it's appropriate to speak to women at gas stations. Like, when, you know, no, we don't want to be spoken to at gas stations. It makes us feel very unsafe.
And then not pestered when you ignore it, right?
Great, yeah. And he, you know, he was like, I know you're on the phone, but you're really pretty. And I said, I'm on the phone with my boyfriend, thank you. And he's like, I'm just giving you a compliment. Like,
yeah.
Exactly.
I don't get, like, I'm a guy. And I have trouble relating to the way guys are. I'm like, how do these guys grow up? What do they think's going to happen?
Yeah. What made you think that was a good idea?
So my girlfriend went to the gas station recently and a guy wanted to talk to her. So he decided it'd be a smart idea to park her in and park behind her. How scary is that for a female?
That's terrifying.
That's terrifying, right? That's terrifying for a male.
I'm a black belt in jiu-jitsu, and if I saw that, my heart would be racing. Racing.
So scary, right? Just because he wanted to talk to her.
Yeah.
But by trapping her in there, he thought that was going to somehow get him in.
This is going to really catch her attention. Like, absolutely.
It's nuts, right? I don't get what goes through guys' heads.
I don't. And it sucks because it makes us feel unsafe.
And on the flip side, it makes normal people, like normal guys like me, so much harder to talk to somebody.
Because we're always on the defense.
Yeah, because
we're always on the edge.
I would like to think I'm pretty normal, but to you, I'm just another guy. I'm just another guy who could be that creep.
Correct. And it's not fair to you guys. Like,
it's not.
We generalize, but it's because the majority of the time, the things that we get, like 9 times out of 10.
9 out of 10. Yeah, 9 out of 10 times. You're dealing with that, right?
And be like, then you meet that one guy, you're like, oh, wow, thanks for not being weird, because you guys
but now you're not normal. You're just not weird.
Yeah.
It's so crazy.
And that's why I think self-defense is so important, because, regardless, not just the whole self-awareness aspect of it, especially nowadays with like TikTok and stuff, I see some incredibly idiotic self-defense tactics on social media, and
there's so much crap on.
Disgusting.
Yeah.
And it's like so much effort, and I'm thinking, well, they can do this, this, and this in response to that. That's why I think the jiu-jitsu end, I think it does take precedence over the others, because it's practical, it's meant to be efficient, so anyone can do it, whether it's a little girl or someone that's a bit older that doesn't have the athleticism behind them. It's all leverage, it's all like contact points, stuff like that, and I having that feeling with me all day, like, I know that makes my dad and my mom happy, and my brother knows.
Yeah, absolutely, right.
My dad talks about it all the time. He's like, she'll be fine, she is just fine, like, let me see someone bother her. Like, my dad's so proud of it. But then I think about it and I'm like, he's just being funny. But I mean, being a dad and imagine, like, your daughter's safe. Like, that must be the best feeling in the world.
I have a daughter. I have an 8-year-old daughter.
Oh, so imagine that for her.
When we're goofing around, she's throwing punches and elbows and knees, and I'm literally tapping her around and she's guarding it, and it's functional.
Yeah.
And I'm a big believer, like jiu-jitsu, Krav Maga, Muay Thai are very functional martial arts. Like, especially jiu-jitsu and Krav Maga, it's hands-on.
Yeah.
It's real shit.
Yeah.
It's the way it works.
Correct.
And then Muay Thai, you're not hitting to tickle someone.
Yeah, no.
Every hit is to destroy you.
Absolutely.
It is so damn it's so damn practical.
Yep.
So that's why I'm a big believer. And like you said, you see a lot of his fancy stuff, his spinning back kicks. I mean, they're all cool. I love that stuff too.
It's fun.
But functionality, right?
Yeah, some
practicality.
55-year-old woman is not going to do a spinning back kick.
I'd be impressed if she did.
Honestly, I mean, I'm sure there are women that are 55 that can do that.
Yeah,
I'm not doubting that whatsoever.
But we're
talking about the average 55-year-old woman that doesn't have the experience in the martial arts, but has underwent a few, self-defense seminars. There's women that I've met one time through self-defense seminars that will reach out to me months later and be like, I still practice with my husband. Like, it's so much fun, and I feel like so confident and empowered that I can do it. And it's like, it's so simple. It's, the way the Gracie family developed it, it was meant to be, 3 to 5 steps, mostly on the 3-step side, where it's like very 1, 2, 3 here, 1, 2, 3. And a lot of it's to get away. Yeah,
just to get away, right?
There are options to, handle it, but I always tell women and even men that have attended my self-defense seminars, I've told them, like, you're not here to go hand in hand with this person.
Yeah.
They're trying to hurt you. You're trying to get out safely and go grab some help. I've been in a situation where I've been followed at a grocery store, and I think I was a brown belt at the time, actually. And he was following me through a neighborhood Walmart, and I noticed it immediately because I started going through different aisles that I don't typically go through.
Yeah.
And he was following me. There was no security guard at this Walmart. It was just, I was like, okay, well, what am I going to do? So I walked outside, and I was like, I'm going to try to get to my car and see if he follows me. And sure, he did. So when I got to my car, I turned my back against it because at that point I knew that no one would come behind me.
Yeah.
My car is behind me. And I yelled very loudly, I kind of got into a stance, and I was like, I told him to back up really loud. And I did that so someone around.
What do you recommend someone should say? Because, I mean, you always see people yelling and screaming. What is it you think that people should say that gets the point across clearly that you're in trouble?
If you're being followed, it should be as simple as, help, I'm being followed, and as loud as you can.
Okay.
Because for me, all I yelled was back up, and I yelled it a couple times, and I actually had a couple run over.
Okay.
That actually spooked him, and he ran off.
Okay.
Mind you, I'm wearing like a jiu-jitsu competition shirt. Okay. Clearly not real. But still, I don't want to engage, especially because he seemed like maybe he lived on the street. That's gross. If I don't need to touch a strange man or a strange woman that's trying to attack me.
Well, that's what I like about stand-up opposed to jiu-jitsu is a teep or front kick or something where you don't actually have to touch the person.
Yeah.
I want to avoid touching someone as much as possible, especially if someone's homeless, someone's going to bite you.
Correct.
Somebody's diseased.
Yeah, exactly. But again, that trickles down to, okay, female, it's 130 pounds. How much power can I really produce? An untrained female, 130 pounds. How much power am I going to produce if I kick this person? And honestly, doing one of the most valuable lessons I've learned.
You gave me that.
I did. One of the most valuable lessons I learned is actually like eye gouging and kicking someone like in the private area is actually a terrible idea. So
what I kind of wanted to touch on, so jiu-jitsu, it's control, you're choking people out, you can break their arms, things like that. But have you ever taught like eye gouging, groin, things like that?
No, I was actually...
And then you're touching on why you don't like it.
So learning the self-defense through the Gracie family way, you know, when someone's attacking someone, and even like when you're just training with someone, you develop that adrenaline, right? Where like I can train for hours and feel nothing until the adrenaline wears off and then I feel everything, right? So that happens with someone that's attacking someone. You know, if you have this adrenaline rush where you're like,
they're not gonna feel
I'm going to attack this person. So when you go to kick them in the groin or poke them in the eye, and instead of actually, you know, taking them down with it, you make them angrier. So
you're saying with adrenaline running, sometimes it won't actually do anything.
Correct.
That's interesting.
Yeah, and I
can
mean,
see that.
You can't.
It's not till afterwards you're like, oh my God, I got hit in the nuts.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. You know, I can't say that would be the reaction for everybody, but you also, to be safe,
it's a risk you're taking.
Yeah. And versus this person was just going to grab you. And now you've made them angry. And now they hate you in the face. They punch you in the face. You know, they kick you. They do something worse than they had originally intended because you pissed them off by kicking them in the groin. So we were taught not to do that. And you know, and what's beautiful about jiu-jitsu self-defense is like we have an answer to everything. If they grab you like this, if they grab you from behind over your arms, if they grab you from behind under your arms, if they pull your hair, if they grab your hand like while you're walking, there's you know, if they stab you this way or this way, there's a reaction to everything. And that's why I love the self-defense, because it's always very simple. Because then...
And you've done it thousands of times.
It's like muscle memory at this point. You know, our professor growing up for the self-defense aspect did a phenomenal job. And every month we're going to have a week where we review it and, you know, we drill it. And, you know, what's funny is like sports jiu-jitsu is what's very mainstream now, which is incredible. You know, I would have never thought. But so a lot of people in class are like, oh, self-defense week. And even sometimes I was like that. I was like, oh, I've been doing this since I was 7. I just, you know, there's a tournament coming up. I really want to do X, Y, Z or whatever. But thinking about it now, like I'm grateful that we reviewed that so often, because I always kept everything sharp. And my reaction timing was the same, because it's all about timing and it's all about how you react to it. The Gracie self-defense is reacting right. Mika always used to tell us that. And I mean, it's the truth, because you can react to things, but you can absolutely react to things in the wrong way.
It's so fun. I can think of like so many times where friends tackle me and he's fallen asleep. Yeah. Or my friend's done this and I've kneed him, he's been on the ground. Yeah. And it's like you feel bad, but it just comes naturally.
Yeah, it's just a safety mechanism.
Yeah, and like I remember front kicking this big bodybuilder and we're playing around and he drops to the ground. I was only 21. I was like, oh geez, like this stuff is pretty effective when it comes second nature.
And you know, when you're doing it for fun, you're like, oh, sorry, but
yeah, and that's not even doing it for real, life or death. Yeah. Have you got some funny stories over the years where you've had like at school or?
I've had a couple. Yes.
What's some things that come to mind where people are like, oh my God, what just happened? Like
my very first one, I was really young actually. It was in elementary school. I remember this. My brother was picking me up from school because we lived right across the street. And this little boy, like, of course, it was such a long time ago. I just remember he tried to tackle me. You know, probably had a crush on me on little boys in elementary school. And I locked a guillotine on him. And I was just holding it. And I was looking at my brother. And this lady came up and was like, let go, let go. And my brother was like, beat it, lady. Let her finish, you know? And then finally the boy was like gurgling. So I let go. So that was like my first time where I was like, wow, I just like automatically did that.
So simple, right?
I was like 9. And it was just like, oh, he tried to tackle me and his head's right here. I'm going to choke it. And then middle school.
The first and only fight I've had was at a club. I got jumped by 7 guys. Football tackled me. Guillotine straight away. It just came naturally.
Yeah, it's like, wow, their head's right there.
But I was in a situation I let go because I had other guys coming in to punch me in the face.
Yeah, of course. Now you have several
It works
people.
for as long as it works.
Yeah, correct.
What was the next thing that kind of happened?
Middle school, I was a little bit older and I was 13, so I'd already kind of had this talk with my parents. My dad was never against us fighting if we needed to, but he was against us starting it.
Okay.
And he was like, if you guys don't start a fight and you end it, I'm not mad. Even if you get suspended or RPC'd or whatever. He's like, you're defending yourself. You start a fight, we're fighting.
Yeah. That's
my dad always said that.
I could agree with that.
She had swung on me for some silly stuff. I think like her boyfriend liked me or some childish stuff. And she swung on me and I dodged it and it turned into, she was like pulling my hair. So I ended up like double legging her because she's like shoving my head down, I was like, okay, and your legs are right here. I went to knee on belly, and then I did actually. That's when the striking came into play. I punched her in the face a handful of times.
Like, why you got a knee on her?
Yeah, I was on the knee on belly.
Such a dominant position.
You know, and
that sucks to be under that position.
What was cool is like all these people talk about when we get into fights, like all I see is red. I didn't. I knew exactly what I was doing. So I'm hitting her, and some girl's like, okay, enough. And I was like, no, like I know when she's had enough. Like I'll decide that. And I still made it back in time for class. But I ended up getting tattletaled on and got suspended.
I did, yeah.
I didn't start the fight, but she walked into class right after the fight. She had braces, so she was bleeding. And so, of course, I ended up getting in trouble. I didn't get in trouble at home. But then everyone at jiu-jitsu was teasing me. They're like, oh, you're a little delinquent child now fighting at school. I was like, I defended myself.
Yeah.
High school, it was very fake. Because the high school I went to, I grew up here, born and raised in Vegas. So the middle school I went to for 8th grade, a lot of those kids went to my high school. So that fight it's crazy how it turned. She did like a spinning back kick. It turned into this really unnecessary, like extra.
Did you get that respect? And the people
I did.
Want to,
and my dad told me that. He's like, you just need one.
Yeah.
And they'll all leave you alone. I went to a magnet school for a couple of years because my dad felt like I needed to challenge my education a little bit more. And at this particular school, no one knew about that fight because it was like in the nicer area, new opposed to the area that I went to school in. So I did have a couple of girls that like were trying to like threaten me and, try to be like, oh, this girl thinks she's tough. I'm half Mexican and I do not look half Mexican.
Hey, really?
I am. My mom's from Mexico City. My dad is Sicilian.
You're the most blonde, white-looking girl
I know.
ever, right?
I got a lot of my dad in terms of like complexion and stuff. But even my Mexican family's pretty light in complexion. Well, for some reason, finding out that I was half Mexican, there's these 3 Hispanic girls at the school that like took offense to it. So they were running around telling people they were gonna jump me and da-da-da. And I remember they followed me out one day from school and I turned around and I told all 3 of them, I said, if you decide that you're actually gonna go through with jumping me, I'm just letting you know I'm not holding back in my end, and 1, 2, or 3 of you will be going to the hospital. Like, I remember telling them that. I was like, because, when I got into fights and, or before, my dad gave us a lecture, like, hey, don't break anything, because that's when you're getting sued. He's like, if, the striking, you're having trouble with the striking part, always choke someone unconscious. They're going to wake up. If some people get freaked out because they, like, convulse and stuff. But if you have to defend yourself at school, choke them instead of break a limb. So you get in less trouble.
Or don't get on top and beat the crap out of the head, because on footage and on the outside, it looks so much worse. And he just fell asleep, or she just fell asleep.
Correct. They always said go for the neck, right?
Yeah, I'm a big believer of that too.
But if I was going to get jumped, I was going to go for their arms and go for their legs and their feet and whatever, They never ended up following through after that conversation.
Do you think that's because, I think when someone's got skill, they speak calmly. They look you dead in the eyes or into your soul. And you know when someone can take care of himself.
Absolutely.
If someone's yelling and screaming, being all macho, you know that's a front.
Correct.
But if someone's very calm and collected, you probably should back away.
You know who is the king of that is my brother. He is the scariest, calmest person. He's actually been in more altercations very recently than I have.
Really?
No, he's never started them. He doesn't need to. My brother's had MMA fights under his belt. So he grew up striking as well. I've already mentioned his jiu-jitsu is just one of a kind. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
My brother's very passive aggressive until he's not. And so he's very calm, doesn't say anything. You know, one time this guy, actually it was after a club, he was still living at home. He showed up to the house drunk. Mind you, I'm sleeping. It's 4 a.m. My mom's sleeping and someone's banging at the door. My dad is a purple belt in jiu-jitsu. His striking's unbelievable. My godfather was a pro boxer. Therefore, my godfather's father taught all of my dad and my uncles how to box. So
wrong family to mess with.
Correct. Correct. So my dad opens the door and he's like, "Who are you?" And so my brother hears it and he comes out and he's telling the guy calmly, because the guy accused my brother of stealing his things. He's like, "Hey man, I didn't take your stuff. But my sister and my mom are in the house. They're sleeping. You don't need to be causing a problem. You need to go. You're drunk. I don't have your stuff."
Yeah.
Guy was refusing to leave. My dad even will tell him to say, "You gave him too many chances. Too many chances." Well, it turned into my brother having to defend himself.
Yeah.
The guy called the cops on my brother.
Oh, really?
Mind you, technically trespassing because he's on our house.
Yeah, he came to your house.
Yeah, so he called the cops on my brother.
Like he didn't get shot.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Exactly what my dad said, He called the cops on my brother after my brother handled it. Cops showed up and kind of was like, "Man, you came here and disrupted the household. We're trespassing." Made him defend himself. It's like, "Well, he's a black belt and he does MMA." Trying to throw my brother under the bus. He ended up being clear and free. He did the guy wanted to press charges but never went through with it. But my brother he's very, hey.
It's just, the person's just being embarrassed.
100%.
People don't like to be embarrassed.
It was an ego thing at that point.
Ego
being
the word.
I think, now granted, there are people in jiu-jitsu that still have really big egos. But I feel like the longer someone trains, it goes away. You
get just humbled and humbled.
You get your ass beat for 20 years, you're going to be pretty humble. That's me. I've been doing jiu-jitsu. This August will be 20 years that I've been doing jiu-jitsu. I've gotten enough ass beatings the last 3 lifetimes.
There's always someone better.
Faster,
more talented.
Every time. And now it took me a long time. I mentioned earlier, I used to hate losing. I would cry and throw tantrums. My coach and training partner, Mylene Angle, one of the owners of Angle BJJ where I train, I've competed against her 4 times, and man, I remember I responded so poorly to losing to her, crying, and I had to create this reason why I hated her. It's I hate her so much because she won all 4.
Yeah.
The first 2 were very close, and the last 2,
you had to learn how to lose.
100%. And even I remember I didn't understand when my dad was mad at me. He's like, "You need to learn how to he's like, "This is embarrassing." And I'm 19, and I'm I don't know what you're talking about. I don't want to lose to her.
Little prima donna.
Correct. Yeah. I didn't know how to act.
Yeah.
But then the older I got, and the more that I won and lost, I was like, it's the same thing. It's hey, I win, I'm going to go back and train. I lose, I'm going to go back and train, and this is what I have to work on. And 9 times out of 10, even when I would win, there was something I needed to fix in that match. And so I slowly started to kind of figure out how to lose. And it's I'm friends with the girls that I compete against now, where we comment on each other's Instagram posts, being a black belt now, the girls are incredible. And so it's very weird to me when I see other black belts, whether they're male or female, not knowing how to act when they lose. You are in the big leagues. Yeah. There are a lot of people better than you now. There's a lot of people better than me now. This is just part of the game.
Jiu-jitsu has I noticed it's very humble, but it's got a high level of respect for one another.
Correct.
And it seems within the community, everybody's very friendly, everyone's very close.
Correct.
Can you relate to that?
So I'm going to say yes, and I'm going to say no also.
Okay.
The reason I'm going to say no is, I mentioned earlier, the politics in jiu-jitsu. They ruin everything.
Politics, is it from club to club, or is it within a club?
I would say it's the older schools.
Okay.
So Gracie Might is very traditional, very if you're Gracie Maida, you train only at Gracie Maida. There's a term in Portuguese called crianche. This was created, this again, very old school. So it's more so the old school guys that are like this. Crianche means trader. So when you would go, say I'm Gracie Maida and I go train at Cobra Kai, I would be considered a crianche.
Okay.
You are shunned, you are frowned upon. That was actually one of the reasons why we ended up leaving Gracie Maida, was because, well, I got to the black belt level and I needed to train with more people. You know, they say if you're one of the best in the room, you gotta go somewhere. Like in jiu-jitsu, like you need to go get your ass beat.
Yeah, I mean that's how you get better, right?
Yeah, if you're beating everyone every day, how are you getting better? You're just not.
No,
and that's kind of where my brother and I were at the gym we were at. You know, I had won a world title. There wasn't a lot of people that could like beat us, especially my brother. So I would go to like citywide open mats at different gyms, and my professor got angry and fired me from teaching classes, fired me from the front desk, like was just so upset.
That's pretty stupid, isn't it?
Yeah, and I mean, he tried to say it was because it was that particular person he didn't like. And I was like, no.
Even so.
It would have been if I went to this one or if I went to this one. Like
that's interesting.
He was angry when I went to the same team in San Diego. So this is the same team. But I'm going to go train with a bunch of girls if I'm going to get ready to compete with a bunch of girls. You know? So that's where the no comes in. It's if people are too focused on the politics of like, oh, you're this team, you should only train this team. That's when people don't get along.
That's interesting.
Because there's no reason. The best people in the world train with everybody.
Exactly right.
And I genuinely believe that.
But UFC guys fly around the world to train with other UFC guys.
Sure, they train with guys that are in their division. I've done that on several occasions.
GSP seemed like in his day, he was training everybody.
Correct.
Still doing it.
And now I will say it has gotten better. You know, everyone kind of trains everywhere, especially here in Vegas now. So that's where the yes comes in. I train now, again, under Cascal. So Walter Cascal is the one that owns the Cascal franchise. He's known my family and I since we were kids, because he actually used to train with Mika. He used to teach for Mika, so he met us when we were kids.
Yeah.
I switched over to Cascal 2020, like in mid 2020, and he was so excited. He actually gave me my first degree on my black belt. He's incredible. He's so much fun, and he's an amazing competitor. And I train at his affiliate, Chris Angle, and everyone from all teams go and train there all the time. Drysdale, Gracie Maida, Atos, 10th Planet, Hybrid Jiu-Jitsu, everyone goes there all the time. And they don't care. They love it. Everyone's welcome. You know, we're welcome to train wherever, you know. And I think that's how it should be. The second that I felt that same feeling that I had with Gracie Maida in Las Vegas, I pulled out of that school. I was like, I don't want to train here, because this is one of the reasons why I left.
Yeah, okay.
I don't want to feel like I can't go make friends. You know, the black belt community for women here in Vegas it's bigger, but it's very small.
Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah.
You know, I want to be able to train with these girls without, you know, getting in trouble by my coach that we pay to train at, by the way.
Yeah.
I pay you to train here.
Yeah.
I should be able to go train wherever I want, you know? So that's the no side. And the yes side is it's getting better, and, you know, we all do end up coming together for big things like that. And it's really cool. You know, at Self-Made, they started doing jiu-jitsu classes there. And I know a bunch of people from those classes because they're from all different teams. So it's nice when I'm working and I see all of my black belt friends and my jiu-jitsu friends there, and it's like, hey guys, what's going on? What's up? Like, it's a nice like camaraderie.
Do you speak much Portuguese?
Absolutely not. But I can understand concepts because I've been around it my whole life.
Okay, but
so I'll know what they're talking about, but I cannot tell you the details of it.
Okay.
Because some of the words can be similar to Spanish, but I mean, it's a very difficult language.
I was just wondering because like being Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and
you're around it all the time.
Yeah, my trainer was Brazilian, so I was learning Portuguese as he was kicking my butt.
Yeah. No,
I was just wondering.
We like know like the fun, like obviously a lot of the cuss words because, well, that's what I feel like everyone learns in a different language first.
Yeah. I think I know one Russian word, and that's a
exactly.
It's a
cuss word, exactly. And like, you know, in tournaments, there's, you know, little words that they say that like it's weird when I hear them. It's like nostalgic. I'm like,
Gotcha.
You know, my whole childhood, you know. But no, I don't speak Portuguese. But again, I can usually kind of figure out what they're talking about. I've noticed, depending on where they're from in Brazil, sometimes they're very clear and concise with their words. And sometimes it's like jumbled and like almost
Slang,
sounds like, yes, like it's the same with like different Spanishes, right? Like, I cannot understand Cuban or Puerto Rican Spanish or Dominican. I cannot.
Do you speak Spanish?
I understand it.
But you don't speak it?
No, I say I speak Spanglish. My mom gets mad. Yeah. My mom's like, you can if you try. And I'm like, because my dad's the one that's American. And he was like, I want them to learn English only first because I want them to speak proper English. We live in the United States. Makes sense.
Makes sense.
But you
never bothered to actually learn.
No.
Gotcha.
My grandpa, my mom's like always gets so, he's like, I can't, I think, but the funny thing is, it's like a lot of our family. Like, I think he only has 2 grandchildren that speak both English and Spanish. We all are kind of like, they'll speak to us in Spanish and we'll reply in English.
That's funny. And just to kind of finish up with, so you encourage like people to do jiu-jitsu, self-defense. Very intimidating for anybody to go to a jiu-jitsu class, especially a female. What do you kind of tell those people? Somebody wants to get into martial arts. Somebody wants to learn to take care of himself. How do they get the confidence to walk in that door and get started?
Luckily, at the gym that I train at, she has an all-women's class.
Oh, really?
And it is stacked. Like,
That's cool.
Not in a stack like higher belt stack. It's actually mostly white belts.
Okay.
And it's incredible. And it's only women on the mat.
That's cool.
And that's such a great intro because I've noticed a lot of the girls, they'll start in the women's class and then, because it's only once a week.
Okay.
So then they want to do more. And that's when they like slowly start to
That's not very common, is it? Just women's classes?
No, I didn't have that.
Seems like there should be more of those.
There should. Yeah. I know Atos Las Vegas has one as well. Once a week, I used to help run that one. But they're slowly starting, and it's very, I think for women, that is the best way to like kind of inch their way into it. At my school, when I see that there's a new girl on the mat, I immediately go up to them, I talk to them, and I reason with them. Like I try to relate to them. So she's like I'll go with them for a sparring round. And I'm like, you ready to kick my butt? And they're like, no, you have a black belt. I was like, girl, I get my butt kicked every day, regardless of the belt that is on my waist. I was like, you're going to do great. You know, so that's usually, nowadays, it's much easier for women to get started because there's so many of them. Especially, again, at Chris Angles, it's run by husband and wife. So because one of the owners is a female, it typically brings in a lot of females. So knowing the right gym to go to, because I mean, there are gyms here that I wouldn't recommend a woman to go to, honestly. And nothing against that gym, but it's just for that comfortability reason. Like I wouldn't send a girl that wasn't interested in like pursuing MMA or jiu-jitsu as a sport to like Syndicate.
Okay,
like,
because it's more a fight gym.
Correct, fight gym, more men, right? I would recommend, I would give them gyms where there was more women and women's classes. So.
That's interesting.
And going to self-defense seminars, I mean, they're few far in between, and the ones that are available, you have to pick or choose kind of what is the right one. But I definitely plan on doing more. I want to start doing them monthly again. Now that I have the facility in the room to do it.
Yeah, you definitely got the facility for it.
Correct.
Yeah.
And it doesn't take much for me. Like because I've done so many reps, it's muscle memory.
Well, you're so passionate about it too,
and I love it. It is.
And like you're so passionate about it.
Watching these girls like do it, and they're like, "Oh my god, I just did it! It's the best. It's the coolest thing in the world." And I'll bring my boyfriend, and bless him,
you should just use him as the dummy.
I do, and I'll let the girls, the Raiderettes,
armbar away.
All the girls were throwing him because I was trying to show them if you do it correctly, he's 200 plus pounds.
Yeah, you can throw
you can throw him. And all of them, they're little too. They're small. They're young.
They are tiny.
I have a video of them just throwing him and throwing him and throwing him. And we had mats that we had brought. But like it's just really nice to see like them, like women be able like, I can do that. So.
All right. So my last question for you. I'm a big believer that like exercise wise, if you don't lifting weights, but you love playing tennis, go play tennis. So when it comes to martial arts, do you think you're better off, like, I like jiu-jitsu, but I like Muay Thai and kicking along stuff way more. So do you think you're better off sticking to something that you enjoy more when it comes to self-defense? Or you think you should really prioritize jiu-jitsu over everything?
I don't think there's anything wrong with learning too much. Right, again, we've talked about the practicality of jiu-jitsu self-defense, but learning how to, even if you don't like you're not a power hitter and you're a power kicker. It's important for you to learn how to stand up correctly and, you know, maybe how to defend your, you know, deflect some hits and that.
But I mean, like,
that.
if you love boxing and you don't want to roll around the ground with a bunch of guys, like, is boxing okay still, you think?
Oh, yeah. My dad always said it best is any martial art is better than none.
That's kind of what I'm trying to get to.
Any is better than none.
Okay.
Like even like stuff like karate and taekwondo, like I don't believe it's 100% applicable, but it's better than nothing.
Yeah.
It is absolutely better than nothing because it will not only give you some sort of awareness, but it does give you confidence, and that confidence is key to being able to defend yourself and also put yourself in the best positions possible to stay as safe.
And that might get you in the door, which leads to the next thing, which the next thing, before you know it, you got a black belt in jiu-jitsu.
Exactly. You never know. It might be for you.
Gotcha. Thank you so much for your time. That was amazing. You're a absolute powerhouse.
Thank you.
Yeah, really good to have you on here. And I hope someone takes action on that.
Yes, come train.